It's recorded. Yeah. Yay. Okay, we're off. We're up and we're away. Welcome back to the Coaching Collective podcast. I'm blessed with Jenna, who Instagram handle is Fit by Jen, correct?
Yeah.
Beautiful. So Jenna is one of Michael's wonderful clients who is also a competitor. And she's been with Michael for quite a long time now. However, she also has her own coaching brand, coaches females, and puts out like fantastic content. So I thought we should get her on board, discuss some things that pop up quite frequently when coaching females, especially sort of within the like intermediate and beginner space, and just cover quite a few topics which I think aren't discussed enough, which I'm sure most female listeners will find useful, hopefully. But yes, welcome. And if you can give us a little introduction, where are you from? A bit of a rundown in regards to your personal journey, like how you got into everything, how you got into competing, how you got into coaching, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. I feel very blessed to be here. So thank
Oh,
you.
I'm glad.
Yeah, gosh, I have been training in the gym now for a few years. I've always just had a very like sporty upbringing, in school it was like how many sports can I play, football, basketball, netball, every sport under the sun. So I was always a sporty kid. I was always very active. And then I remember vividly, like on my 16th birthday, like that's how old you had to be for the gym. And I was like, all I want is a gym membership, mum. Like, just get me a gym membership. And then, yeah, since then I have been training. I think that only the last few years I've been taking it more seriously. But yeah, I was always training, but I was very uneducated, I guess, in like the nutrition department. And growing up, like I was never kind of, I wouldn't say I was overweight. I was very blessed in the genetics department. Like my parents are both just sticks. So I was kind of like, eat whatever you want. And like, you wouldn't really kind of gain, like have the consequences from that. And then I did like year 12 in COVID, and I think just having all sports culled just killed me. So I think gym workouts from home was where I kind of started, and I got my first coach in COVID, and she taught me a lot, and I was with her for quite a while. And then I was kind of ready just for that next step, and I had inspirations to compete. She was a competitor herself, and after a few years with her, I think I just kind of outgrew that a little bit. So I was just ready for that next step. And I think it was through your story actually that I found like Michael and you guys. You were doing like a physique kind of,
Oh, I
and then I did one of those, and just,
I completely
yeah,
forgot about those. Did you do
they
one of them?
Yeah, I think I did it through you, but then Michael gave me the feedback because I wanted to compete, and I was just like,
Oh.
astonished by what I heard, the feedback, and I was like, oh my gosh, get me on board. So, yeah, Michael's took me to my first like competing journey, and yeah, I'm just keen to keep going from now on. I don't think Michael's ever going to see me go. I think he's stuck with me. But yeah, I'm very happy with where I am, and like the last 12 months working with him and just you guys in general, like it's been literally life changing. I've like leveled up in so many aspects of my life, and yeah, very, very happy and comfortable with where I am now.
Beautiful, man. What an introduction. We even got like a shout out within that as well. How good. Um, do you find do you have any clients that are athletes or have like an athletic background as well?
Yeah, I have. Oh my gosh, I've got like cheerleaders. I've got like dancers, and they're like very high up in their kind of sports, and I'm just like wow, like amazed at what they do, and like they stick to their deficits while training
Uh-huh.
intense amounts day in and day out, and I'm like, go you girlfriend, like.
Yeah. I always say to people, and I wish it was more like a commonly known thing when it comes to just general adherence altogether, whether it be like diet, training, etc., that it's very much so a skill. And what I've noticed with clients and just people in general is individuals who have the previous like athletics background or they have like a sporting background that regardless of whether or not nutrition guidance was involved, ever since they were younger. I think it's just that discipline, the resilience that they build, like the self-esteem they build. They always find the coaching process significantly easier. And I think it's just because like it's a skill that they've acquired through like being already coached, if that makes sense. And like knowing that, okay, like I trust the plan, I trust what my coach is saying. Because like I've seen what happens with like said athletic background, if that makes sense. Do you find that quite similar?
Yeah. Yeah, and like they're so structured in their training with their routine. So like they've just got their organization down pat. So it's meal prep and like, adding some steps into the day. Like it's not really like a big problem for them. Like they're very smart about how they go about their time management.
Yeah, I agree. And it's like they blessed in the sense whereby like they already have that skill of like organization and even just like this perspective and the experience knowing that their hard work that they put in will pay off, if that makes sense. And I completely understand how individuals who say don't have any experience in doing anything like that when they first start with a coach, there's not necessarily like a conflict, but there's just um can sometimes be like a bit of a gap in regards to sticking to the plan and obviously like being incentivized because they haven't done it before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah. So I feel like I always say to people that adherence is such a skill-based thing. And fortunately, like a lot of these athlete-esque individuals who have like grown up with sporting backgrounds or whatnot just happen to be like ahead of that, if that makes sense, as opposed to like jumping into something that's so foreign. Like they don't have any structure, they don't have any like really detailed guidance in regards to like literally measuring things to the gram, etc. So it all feels a bit extreme. Whereas I'm sure if you gave like a cheerleader a meal plan or told them to follow training or like a gymnast, they'd be like, sweet, piss easy,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
not
It's
extra.
helpful when you have a background of
Mm.
something, whatever it is, like it will play its role in helping you now.
Yeah. Competing wise, do you think that you've got like the competing bug forever?
Oh, yeah, like it's all I thought about. All I thought about during my prep was I just can't wait to grow more because, like,
Yeah.
I know I'm very underdone in the muscle department. But just I love the journey so much. I'm like, if it takes me 20 years to get to where I need to be, then hell, like I'm in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like, and seeing all like the seasonal competitors now, like they're not far off. I'm like far out. Like
Mm.
I can't believe it's already the next season.
It's so
Time flies.
crazy how like the seasons turn over so quickly. It's like one season's done, the next season starts. Like one season's done, the next season's starting. And the gap in between, like the season ending and where we are now, where like shows are, I think the closest show's like 5 weeks out or something like that. Like the next 5 weeks will fly. Like it's so quick. But I am very much so on board with what you said in regards to like if it takes me 20 years, it doesn't matter because like the lifestyle just provides so much fulfillment and purpose and enjoyment that like if you remove the stage, like I'm still going to be consistently pursuing better. So I think too, like it's interesting when people are in such a rush to compete. Actually, you know what? I was in such a rush when I like first got the idea too. But I feel like once you start and then you recognize, you know what, like I don't care if this takes me a while. I would rather get up there like feeling like I've made a significant amount of change compared to say last time, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
No, definitely. And even like I wanted to compete the year prior, so not last year, the year before. And I actually stopped and I was like, nah, like I'll get on that stage and I know I just won't be happy with, the end result. Like I knew I wasn't ready as much as like mentally I'm like, I want to do this and I'm so excited to do this. But I waited another year and like even after last year, I'm like, yeah, I've still got many years of training and eating
Yeah.
under my belt. But it's amazing when you love the journey. And exactly as you said, I'm like, I'd still go and do my steps. I'd still eat my meal prep because that's exactly what I was doing before I even had aspirations to compete. So Yeah, it satisfies me. It helps me show up as my best self, and like I'm a better person when I do all of that. So
I know. I feel like sometimes um in the coaching space too, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that sticking to the plan, not a misconception, but I think people perceive it as something that's like unenjoyable. And I think, man, anytime I go off plan, yeah, I initially have a good time, but I reckon 95% of the time I lay in bed after it and I think, I probably just would have enjoyed like eating my meal as per usual.
oh, it's like, was it even worth it? Like it was good, but was it that good?
Yeah, bad. And like I still consider myself to be a massive foodie. Like love food. Like I would literally eat absolutely anything. Like love food. But at the same time too, um food I feel like just doesn't taste as good as the satisfaction of like getting to your end goal. Keep in mind I still would like always include like a weekly off-plan meal. I'm not saying, you know how people used to say nothing tastes as good as skinny feels? I don't mean
Yeah.
that because like I never in my life want to be like skinny how I used to be. So like
Mm.
I will always be eating. And
Mm.
even like I could go out for an off-plan meal and it could be less calories than what like my actual meal at home was. And I would still think, you know what? I actually prefer the feeling that I get from just like eating my normal meals because it's
Yeah.
so satisfying. But either way, I thought on this podcast we should go through some topics in which not nobody talks about, but I don't think are discussed enough. Um, Alongside just like things that people don't say that's either like involved in female health and fitness, etc. I feel like on social media, it's sometimes hard to navigate like when you're creating content because you never want to offend anybody. But, and you know that half the time, what will like the reality of, say, getting to said end goal will inevitably come across like borderline offensive for some people. Like, I remember in a Loom, this was like a week ago, explaining how when say, if you were to go and buy a car, you would have to work super hard, like bust your ass to earn all of this money, and then you exchange that money for the car. The same thing happens whether or not you're wanting to improve your psychological health, whether or not is that thumb coming up like on your screen too? Oh, those listening, when you're on Zoom and you stick your thumb up, like thumbs up comes up on the screen. How the same thing happens on Loom videos. Have you noticed that like streamers and like fireworks will occasionally go off if you put your fingers up? Yeah. But next time
I've seen people post it.
it's only happened to me a couple.
Oh, it's
It's so like distracting. But fuck, now I've lost my train of thought. I can't remember what I was saying. Um, Either way, oh yeah, so like you say work really hard, you buy a car. The same thing applies for, say, if you're like focusing on psychological health, you are focusing on hormonal health. You want really great like fertility. If you're focusing on a body composition goal, like you have to create and be able to ride the wave of discomfort and sit in discomfort. And like that's what you exchange for the results. So if you're not feeling a level of discomfort and you can't sit in that discomfort, we have to accept that you aren't going to get anything in return. Like you're not willing to put the work in, you're not willing to do whatever you need to do, whether it be like emotional regulation or better organization to help you ride that wave easier. But I remember saying it out loud, saying that like I wasn't referring directly to the person, but I was like, these people don't deserve results because they're not willing to feel uncomfortable, la la la. And it just sounded so offensive. And I thought if I said that in a reel, I reckon I would go viral and my comments would be like blown up with hatred. But I can't remember
yeah.
how that tied into our topic, but I just thought I would mention it anyways.
And you've only got so long in an Instagram reel before you either lose their attention or like, the video gets cut off. So it's like,
Yeah.
how much information can I put in and like what information am I putting in? But yeah, things can definitely be taken the wrong way. It all comes from a good place, you
Yeah.
like need to inform them so they're aware of like what's required from them in order for them to get to where they want to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you say that with, without offending them? Hard.
Yeah, and it does all come from a good place. It's like giving somebody say extra accountability within a check-in, or trying to explain downfalls that you're doing, or like I reckon the hardest one is explaining to somebody that they're responsible for everything and they have to adapt like a radical responsibility mindset in regards to everything. Because when you do, you give yourself all the control. Like the control and the outcome and the power is in nobody else's hands but your own. So, like, you would rather have that. You would rather have all of that responsibility. But sometimes when you say it, it just sounds quite intense. And then I think how that's then projected onto social media and like coaching accounts, I think it's sort of like gaslights people into thinking that a lot of results and like the development of habits and like lifestyle changes are significantly easier than what they are. Um,
Mm.
because I find too that like adjusting your habits that you've spent years and years and years feeding into like is such a difficult thing. Like it's so fucking hard. Nobody is going to then put a camera up, film themselves, explain that it's so hard. You're probably going to fall down 100 times and you have to have the resilience and the guidance and the support to get back up, and like the radical responsibility to acknowledge that you're in control, and then edit it and then post it on Instagram and then say, hey, this is how you get results.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Um,
you don't realize that until you actually go through it yourself. Like even me, I look back on like my few years and I'm like, gosh, it was so up and down, but like look where I am now. And it's like
yeah,
if I didn't stick through it, if I didn't, keep pulling myself back in, I wouldn't be where I am. So it's until you've done it, it is really hard to, I guess, trust the process and do the things you need to do. But that's why having a coach is such an important thing. And it's like you've got someone in your back corner, someone external to you that can remind you of these things and just tell you to keep going.
yeah, absolutely. I think too, I always say I think too, and like, does that make sense? Like, just to clarify what I'm saying, but irrelevant. I think too, being able to, take all the stress of, say, focusing on whether or not things are working, like thinking about things in the plan, etc., and like just picking them up and giving them like metaphorically to your coach, I think is one of the most beneficial things in which you can do, is acknowledging, okay, I'm paying this person for a service. They do this for a living. They have like 100 times more experience than I do in programming and everything that they're doing. So my only stressor should be whether or not I'm executing the plan, and like executing the plan as best as I possibly can be. Like if things aren't working, they're gonna see. They're gonna see in progress photos, they're gonna see in like how you're tracking data, things that are slipping through the cracks, etc. I will say one of the things that burns me is not questioning. I love questions, but like framing them in a way whereby it's pushing you to do something, if that makes sense, as in like
Yeah.
suggesting that we increase calories or we change increase, no one ever wants an increase, like decrease calories, or like change their training to like increase sets significantly and stuff like that. I think in instances when that starts to pop up is when sometimes things start to unravel a little bit. And something that I will acknowledge I've gotten significantly better at this year altogether is setting boundaries in place with clients, because I've noticed that if you don't, and you don't like reiterate that you're paying me to do this, like we follow my timeline, because we know that if we follow your timeline, we're going to get there 3 times slower. Um, Setting the boundary, everything just goes so much smoother. So
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I don't know if you've had any like situations like that within the coaching process, but
Yeah. No, I had one experience and it was just like she wasn't sticking into like the food she was on, and her kind of response was they're not low enough for me. I said, what do you mean? And pretty much just thought more motivation would stem with the lower the calories, like the harder it was. I'm
Mhm.
like, the problem's not the calories. The problem is the consistency to your current calories. I'm like give those a go. Like the hardest thing right now is being consistent with that. We don't need to like make things harder than they need to be. It's just, yeah, it's like, I don't think a drop in calories is going to make you do the work anymore than now. So it is hard. It's hard explaining that to them again without seeming cutthroat and hurting their
Yeah.
feelings. But yeah, it's just a matter, I guess, of the language you use and reiterating how much it's coming from a good place and how much it's, to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is like a very fine line to walk. I think as well, it's very like person dependent in regards to the criticism and not even criticism, more so just the feedback that you can provide. Sometimes I find some individuals are really, really good at taking on feedback. They will never take it personally whatsoever. However, other individuals, even if you explain that, like, I wish somebody told me this, and like, these are mistakes that I've made myself before, sort of take that as a personal attack when it's not in any way whatsoever. So it can be sometimes difficult to like walk that line. But I think it is really important that regardless of like your experience level, whether or not you've never had a coach before, like you've never even previously considered having a coach, or you're quite experienced, or like you're a coach yourself who has a coach, knowing that again, like nothing ever comes from a negative place, and
Mhm.
that it would be unrealistic to say that like the coaching journey is just like this uphill, like rainbows and everything like that. Like it's always, always, always like whoo, 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 whoo. And then you just build so much throughout it.
Yeah, no, a good coach will, tell you where you like give you the tough love when you need it. We're not here just to, pump rainbows and sunshines because sometimes tough love is required. And yeah, it's all from a good place, rest assured. And something that I feel like I have to say a lot, like, and it comes down to also knowing your client and knowing how they'll take things and recognizing when they need that tough love versus when they need that bit of extra support. I think I've like that's really focused on developing some deeper relationships with my clients and just getting to know them a little bit more and like how they, I guess, best take things in a way that's actually going to benefit them rather than leaving them, upset and, wanting to quit really.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I think I've only ever had one instance where somebody's, I'm outing myself here, threatened to cancel over something that I said. However, I will stand by the fact that I'm so glad that that like situation happened. It was about a meal plan with this previous client that I had who I don't think in the time working with us, I mean, she had worked with like several of our coaches and just like couldn't seem to find the right fit, which has never happened before either. We've never had somebody jump between coaches. It's usually, okay, we assess who do they suit best, have a consultation, and then sort of go from there. But it was in regards to nutrition and just not being able to string a single day of like a 10 adherence together. And then week after week after week, like wanting to again, like remove the calories because similar situation, they thought that maybe if it was like more difficult, it would be more incentivizing. And then, like, the inclusions in the meal plan were just edging very much so on if somebody saw this and I was prescribing this to you, I would be so uncomfortable. Like, it pushes boundaries in regards to what I will program. Like, I refuse to. So I think too, again, like if you are, say, starting with a coach, you very much so, I think, have to also resonate with the individual, like who you're signing up to, what they stand for in regards to, like, say, nutrition, because there are such a plethora in this day and age of coaches who still have, say, like a similar outcome. They still market towards similar people, say, like a female health and fitness coach, but you'll have some people who are programming like sugar-free jelly and like 40 grams of Biscoff for breakfast, and then you have individuals who are on the other end of the spectrum, whereby it's like eat off a wooden chopping board and you can only eat like eggs and fruit, for example. So again, I think like really finding somebody who you resonate with from like a who you want to become, not okay, who has these really poor habits that I have, but like who do I want to become? Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? In regards to like coach selection, what would you say somebody should look for?
Yeah, definitely like similar to how you said, like just I guess the kind of lifestyle and choices they make, what they do. Like, you know, there are exactly as you said, lots of coaches out there who will have their overnight wheat bix when it's just got like 10 Oreos on it, Biscoff. It's like, you know, if that's your vibe, go for something like that. Whereas
Never understand that.
I just I'm
Half
like I
like a dietitian too. And I think, what in the world is happening?
I know. I'm just like, I'd be hungry in 5 minutes and I'd feel sick. But that's actually what kind of enticed me to you guys originally was just like the approach you went about it. And like, you know, it's very such a basic, but like just whole foods. And, you know, I remember when I got my first meal plan from you guys and just the food sources and the quality of meals I was given, I'm like, wow, like this is nutrition that I've never seen before because I'd never done meal plans prior to you guys. It was always straight into flexible dieting. And I think I definitely struggled with that. I was trying to, you know, whatever fits your macros. So, like, I think if I didn't have a coach right now, say, for example, me, like, I wouldn't go for someone like that. But yeah, I think you just really need to go for someone that kind of fits your vibe. You know, you enjoy what they post, you enjoy their content, you enjoy, you know, you look at their lifestyle and you go, I want to like do something similar to that. So, yeah, just finding your vibe, I guess.
Mm, I agree. I agree. Because I think in regards to what you said, like if it fits your macro wise, um, I too really struggle with macro tracking. I'm sure now if I were to never follow a meal plan, but it's hard because I know that I would macro track and like organize a meal plan and I would just eat that for like week on week on week on week. So it's like whether or not you would consider that even like macro tracking. But
Mm.
I know early on in my journey, I was very much so, let me squeeze every piece of like shit, nutrient void food into this program like daily as much as I possibly can. And I just found it more difficult to stick to. And I found it time consuming. I found that like because I had no boundary, there was no being told what to do. I was in control of everything. I would be midday and I'd be like, actually, you know what? I feel like that. I'm gonna change my whole entire day's worth of food to adjust dependent on that. And don't get me wrong, like I love a nutrient vo like void food. But I think on the day to day for your like 90 to 95% of the time, again, especially if you're looking for good health and psychological and compositional outcomes, eating in a way that is beneficial for that, that doesn't push like consistent consumption of food that does not make you feel good, I think is super important. I think too, the meal planning as well, obviously, again, very like dependent on the individual, dependent on preferences, like digestive issues, whatever it may be. It's modeling what good nutrition is. I think it's super important, especially if you're a beginner, to have somebody model to you, like with meal timings, with suggestions in like how to improve digestion and what state in which you should be eating meals and how to actually like structure and explain like literally ingredient for ingredient its purpose and what it does for you from like a micro and macronutrient perspective. You can then take that, know, okay, this is how good I feel with the nutrition that was modeled to me. Now I can put my own little spin on it with, say, macro tracking. But I remember when I first started macro tracking, man, it was disgraceful. Like, I reckon every second night there was a halo top in there, followed by the next day, like 4 days of constipation afterwards.
Sometimes when I'm bored, I will actually dive deep into my MyFitnessPal and I'll go into like 2020 and I'll just
Time.
like, what were you doing, girlfriend? But yeah, no, I think as well, if you have like the intention to improve your training as well and grow muscle, like I think the meal plan is the way to go, and just yeah, making sure you're getting the right nutrients in and meal timing, like that's something I have significantly improved myself, just nutrition pre and post workout, because it's like my intention right now is to grow muscle, and I want to do everything within my control to enhance that. So if I'm macro tracking Biscoff oats before my workout and then I'm eating a whatever after my workout, like I'm not really facilitating that kind of muscle growth. So I think also, yeah, I guess what your goal is, I think for some, if their goal is just weight loss, it's like, okay, how can I lose that weight in the most enjoyable way possible? But yeah, it comes back to like what the OG goal is, I guess.
Yeah. I agree. Again, like it's so individual with everybody's goals. People also come from such different like walks of life. Like we were discussing the athlete wise thing, like it would be so much easier, say, if everybody was an athlete or they had previously done like some form of sport. I can guarantee you that their level of adherence to like a super well-structured meal plan would be quite a lot higher. But obviously, like that isn't the case whatsoever, in regards to just clientele, all of that. But I think the most important thing in regards to just like our general topic of what nobody sort of wants to tell you is that like if you don't have that, and if you like say receive your onboarding back from a coach and it's quite a contrast to how you're currently living, it is completely normal for it to be also really uncomfortable. Like when you're developing habits, again, when you're being modeled something that you've really never done before, when you're eating breakfast and you've gone the last 5 years not eating breakfast, or when you're eating more food volume than like you've ever eaten before, and you are so stuffed that you don't want to eat food and you're like skipping meals and whatnot, like it is quite normal for it to be quite an uncomfortable process. And I guess that applies to like every element, whether it's training, nutrition, steps, all of that. Like I feel like nobody really advertises. Obviously, you wouldn't advertise it. Again, like you'd probably get rid of half of your potential clientele and so. But yeah, nobody tells you that it is sometimes like a really uncomfortable and quite a what's the word when something sort of like shocks you? Like a
I get what you mean though. Like, and when everyone comes, like when people first start, it's like, I want to lose weight, I want to start, the deficit straight away. It's like, hang on, no, take a step back. Let's just focus on building the habits that are going to make your weight loss journey sustainable, more efficient. It's like, let's just take it week by week. We'll focus on your adherence to the meal plan week 1, and then we'll work our way up to that step count by week 2. It's like everyone's in such a hurry to, get on top of everything, get into their deficit straight away. But exactly that, like they get that first original plan at maintenance and they're overwhelmed, and it's a shock horror to what they're doing currently. So it's like we need to get all of that down pat first, before we even think about our next step.
Absolutely. I agree. And there's nothing worse than like sending somebody's onboarding back and getting a message. I don't remember one time receiving a message being like, I can't eat this. It's way too much. Like I'm trying to lose body fat. And I thought, let's just see whether or not we can stick to the plan like to begin with. And again, I actually wanted to make a reel out of this too in regards to like uncomfortable things. What I have noticed as of recent, and I explain it to all clients all the time, that regardless of what your goal is, doesn't matter what your intake currently is, it doesn't matter whether or not you're in a surplus, doesn't matter whether or not you're at maintenance, doesn't matter whether or not you're in a deficit. If you can't adhere, whether it be because you're missing meals or you're eating off plan, it's still like not adherence. I think sometimes we think, oh, like I can just skip a meal because I don't really feel like it. That's the most common thing, is just like leaving food out. Oh, like I felt a little bit full, so I just stopped eating and I threw out half of my dinner. And I think it's important to understand that that is you like pushing the discomfort out of the way. And then you're so much more susceptible to then when you're dieting, eating off plan because you can't sort of set that boundary with yourself and say, no, I've got to stick to the plan, so I've got to finish my meal. So I always, 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 when we have these, or like when these little things pop up with an individual who like wants to lose body fat later down the line, and say they're skipping meals or they're not finishing their meals and like their intake is like maintenance, like not high whatsoever. It's purely just because it's either easy, like lack of organization, or they just perceive it as being better that they're missing food. I always make a very good point that your ability to establish discipline now, when it's significantly easier to eat food than to not eat food, is going to help you so much more later down the line because you can acknowledge, okay, I know, like I signed up for a level of discomfort. I've got to just yam the meal in, you know?
Yes. Yeah. And it's kind of like, what do you expect? Like, you have literally signed on with someone to give you a plan to follow. Like, why aren't you even giving like yourself the opportunity to follow it? Like, you're just going to set yourself up for failure if you're not doing what you've been told to do. So, and then it's a tough one, especially I find like, skipping meals. It's kind of like,
Oh, you cut out for a second. Can you hear me?
oh, I wasn't hungry. I thought it was better if I didn't eat it. And it's like, oh, it's not kind of how it works.
I think this might be like slightly delayed.
You're frozen now.
Oh
Maybe
no.
it's mine.
I think
Okay.
it's
Where did
your,
that?
yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no, you're okay. Okay, as long as you can hear me. It came through,
Yeah.
but yeah, no, like I completely agree with you. And as well, I think we get so fixated on the body composition side of things and forgetting that we're not just eating for body composition. Like we're eating for and making sure that our meals are finished because every gram on that plan has a purpose. So if we skip a meal that has 30 grams of protein and say 12 grams of fat, we're really, really undercutting ourselves from like a general health and outcome perspective, purely just because we didn't feel like it. It isn't just the removal of calories, it's literally pretty much a day's removed worth of progress, purely just because we're so under these markers. Um, yeah, I think. How do you feel just in regards to hunger and cravings and dealing with these things? And what would you, or what's your like typical discussion with clients who say like feel as though they're struggling with adherence because of either like hunger, cravings, or things that are normal to experience? And like, how do you explain these to people?
Yeah. So I always like will give them the tips to kind of, like prevent the effects as much as we can. Like, it's like hunger in a deficit. There's only so much you can do. Add volume, drink water, like providing them with all the methods, like meal timings. Like meal timings is such a big one, and getting your body clock adjusted to the times of day it should be eating. And it's like, prioritizing all those things that are going to prolong that hunger or prolong that discomfort, I guess. And then, when that discomfort is still there and it's still hanging around, just like making it making it known that that is required, that is part of it, and it's just, a sacrifice, I guess, that we need to cop in order to get to where we want to be. It's like a massive on that quote. It's like nothing will change unless you change. So like part of that change is you accepting that discomfort. And another thing I reflect on is, if it were easy, everyone would be able to do it. So it's not easy, but like prove to yourself that you can do it. But yeah, I think if they've got everything down pat, if they've got their meal timing sorted, their water sorted, but it's like prep, it's like you're just going to get to a point where you will be hungry, and like that's what you signed up for, because that's what it takes to get to where you want to be, and you need to accept that.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation. I feel too like if it wasn't uncomfortable, we would all be so jacked and shredded.
Oh,
Like, it
literally.
would be
And
so
like, That's why a lot of people, I think, fall short when they try and do these journeys on their own, because they're just not educated enough in like what's involved, what's required. So having that external person in your back corner being like, no, this is part of it. Trust the process, ride those waves, stick with it. Like you will simply like get to where you want to be, and you're not going to look back regretting that discomfort ever.
Yeah. That actually leads me on to a point whereby I didn't actually have this noted, but like the controversial topic of whether or not your coach should like be in shape. And what you mentioned in regards to like having the experience, I think when you bring up the debate of whether or not your coach should say be somebody who's in shape or whether or not they have to have like competed before or all of that stuff, I think what's most important is obviously like an education base. You have individuals who are out of shape who have like the like great experience. They have like super high levels of knowledge in regards to specific things and vice versa. Like you could have a coach who's shredded and like has these great glutes and like perfect skin, all of this, but they have no real like experience in regards to the coaching side of things or like the educational side of things. I will say that something that I've noticed, I wouldn't say above like the knowledge base and like the education side, but just the personal experience with things. So having navigated every single phase and so many challenges that also pop up in an individual's journey and how like important that is. For me, I would never, ever, ever say sign up for a coach who's never gotten super lean, and I would never sign up to a coach who has never spent a significant amount of time focused on building muscle and hasn't repeated these things like several times before, because the amount of times whereby clients have brought something to my attention within their check-ins or they've sent me a message midweek or whatever it may be, whether it's like hunger related, whether or not it's like food focus related, whether or not it's just like general anything. And having the like personal experience where you can like empathize and you can resonate with how they're actually feeling because you've been there before, I think is super, super important as well. So pretty much just having a coach who like walks the walk, if that makes sense.
No,
Mm.
I agree. Yeah. I see even just coaches that post their lifestyles now, and I'm like, I just wouldn't partake in any of that, let alone want to be coached by that. So yeah, I think definitely choosing your coach is super, super important, and there's so many things to it. So whether or not you look at their physique and like that's a reason you want to be coached by them or not, like, but I think that education base and yeah, experience is everything, and you can't even put a price on that. And
Yeah.
that's the thing with the investment of coaching, like you're paying for their knowledge and you're paying for their experience, and that's what a lot of people like don't understand when they're coming into the coaching world.
Mm. And I think too, it's so much more than just like a PT course. I reckon
Mm.
the PT course was like out of the one thing that gave like out of that, even like nutrition course, like you get a qualification out of it, but the amount of knowledge that I've gotten out of other courses that don't say have like an official qualification trumps these things so significantly, or even just being in like educational forums and like paying um week on week like payments for these like forums or like educational platforms, etc. Like nobody talks about that either or like discusses that really ever. And I remember originally getting into coaching purely because I was so obsessed with just training, like the biomechanics behind training. I remember like my whole entire, if I scroll down on like my saved Instagram, like to probably 4 or 5 years ago, all it is like training explanation videos of like exercises. And I feel like in this day and age where coaching is sort of perceived as something that is so like, oh, perfect lifestyle, you can have so much balance like by being a coach. Like I can go for like a 5 hour walk on the beach and then sunbake, and I always think what the heck are these people doing with their time? Like I feel like I'm stuck for time when it comes to um, like coaching and like managing the business and like proper content creation, like educational content creation, and just like even general expansion of knowledge and whatnot. I don't know who sold us the dream that being like a coach was better for your like life. Well, don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
It is very good for the bodybuilding lifestyle, like very, very good. But I would say that like I would never, ever, 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 again, I feel like this is very individual dependent on like what your client base and business looks like, but I would never say that being a coach like gives you more like a whole heap of flexibility. Like it's flexible, but
yeah.
it's 7 days a week. Like I
It's very consuming. Yeah, like it's probably more hours than a 9 to 5 job, most definitely. And it's just like the stress of like people like relying on you for, you feel, even if like it's a Sunday and you get those messages coming through, it's like technically I like probably don't need to respond, but I have someone relying on me. I'm going to respond anyways, and then that works out me working on my Sunday, which your normal full time Monday to Friday people, they're just chilling on their Sundays. So I'm searching for more hours in the day. I'm like, oh, up at 4 or 5 some mornings and still working at my desk late at night. And I'm like, I can't go to bed. Where did the time go? So it's,
yeah.
yeah, don't get me wrong, it is like amazing. And I guess you can technically take your laptop wherever you want and work, but I'm such a homebody. I like my desk. I like my multiple
Yeah.
screens.
Uh-huh.
So
I know.
yeah,
People are always like, "Oh, you can travel so much." And I think I can't put my desk in my suitcase. Like I can't pack my monitor in my suitcase. Like this spot right here is like my Zen spot. Open my laptop, check-ins are there, super productive. I always feel so like focused and everything like that. But like it would be so naive to say that being a coach and that being, say, like your primary source of income, or say like your only source of income, and like your job is definitely like fantastic, but I definitely would say at the same time, it's not for people who aren't willing to work like 6 or 7 days a week. And it's not a job for, I would say, individuals who are in it just to make money, because it's not just nutrition and training programming. Like I feel like every day I double as like a psychologist with people's issues and like oversharing, and like there's a lot of mental load that goes along with it, like the business side of everything and like running a business and dealing with like payments and payment issues and all of that stuff. Like it is very consuming at the same time. As well as if you don't like upskilling. I will never, ever, ever. This is the one thing I will never understand about the industry is coaches who get into the industry and don't upskill and don't expand their knowledge. Like if I think about how much I've changed, even from like a year ago, like it's night and day. And do you find it really satisfying when you're on looms and you can like pick up on the things that you're mentioning that like you've learnt and everything like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, something new unlocked. It's
Yeah.
have to be like leveling up and looking for more, looking to learn, enjoy learning, because like everything's constantly evolving and changing as well. It's like you have to accept that, and if you're not like interested in learning, like you're just going to be held behind, and you're not going to give your clients the best opportunities that they deserve, and like that's what they're coming to sign up for, your education and your knowledge. So I think it's like a priority for coaches to upskill and learn, do better.
Absolutely. I definitely agree. A couple things to discuss in regards to, I would say, being aware of before hiring a coach. I know we like already touched on a couple of these things. One being like change and developing habits is meant to be uncomfortable. And usually, like, if you're uncomfortable, like something's happening. Like, when you start to pair the feeling of discomfort with, oh, okay, like a like there's good coming out of this, the more discomfort I can literally sit through, the more I'm getting closer to like that future self. I think that association is super important. Um, uh, what about in regards to the importance of weeks that don't feel their best? How do you sort of frame these? Or say like somebody checks in and they've had like this happen and that happen and they've like really struggled, one from just like an adherence perspective because like it's genuinely stressful and you can really empathize with the individual, but like what are your strategies or what would you say to somebody um about the weeks that don't feel like you've made any progress because everything's gone to shit. But what role do they play in an individual's journey?
Yeah, I always just go back to consistency and like how much consistency will get you over the line rather than perfection, and just like not relying on these perfect weeks. And it's often the hardest weeks we, see the most progress because it's pushing through that and then getting back to your good week. If you had stopped and given up at that point in time, you wouldn't have gotten to that next week that was a little bit better. And I just say, like, every day, every week, if you're just aiming to do better, striving to make improvements and pick up on what potentially went wrong last week, then that's never going to fail you. And that's what's going to allow you to be consistent. And like, we need the hard weeks. And I'm always like, the hard weeks make the good ones feel 10 times better. And you go, be like, shit, like I'm glad I pushed through and I'm glad I got to the other side of this. And, the more you kind of go through those difficult weeks, the more equipped you are to then handle them again in future. So I just think just always strive to do better, to improve, and to learn from your mistakes, really. And yeah, that will never let you down.
I agree. I love to refer to them as well as like character building weeks, whereby um like the ones that feel the shittest, but you're still checking in, even like doing your daily habits or like submitting, say, however you're tracking biofeedback, and they just look like trash. The effort that you put in to actually like check in, make sure your check-in's still coming through on time, filling out the data, even though like as you're filling it out, it doesn't feel good whatsoever. I think is super important because it builds a lot of resilience and just puts, like you said, like it puts things into perspective whereby you can recognize, okay, like maybe I could have organized this a little bit better. I could have dealt with this a little bit better. Now I have a week of like experiencing it, and now I need to make these adjustments so that the next time I have a week like this, which is inevitable, I can handle things potentially a little bit better. And I think it's very reflecting how individuals sort of value their health and whatever their goals are in weeks whereby things do go to shit. Not meaning like that things have to be perfect whatsoever, but even just like the check-in, making sure that the check-in comes through, for example, I think is such a big character reflection. Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on punctuality and the importance of punctuality with all of the like more like housekeeping stuff?
Yeah, I'm big. And it's like, when it's your check-in day, like if your first priority isn't waking up, submitting that check-in, doing your progress photos, then it's almost like, well, why are you being here? Like, what do you expect out of this? And then even like going back to the daily habits, it's like, I need that data to see what's going on in your week, to see where we're falling short, to see what we need to improve on. It's like the most, other than obviously doing the work, like that's a responsibility on your end to then help my side of the team to get you through to that next step. So yeah, my girls know how much I'm like, where are your daily habits? And like I understand, like life happens, we're human beings, things pop up, and like the odd one isn't like that's not there occasionally, or the late check-in, and they're always messaging and apologizing, like, I'm sorry it's late, but this popped up. I'm like, that's all right. Like,
Yeah.
even you just coming to me and saying it's going to be there, it's just going to be a little bit late, like that to me is still showing that like you care and that you want to improve, and you're keen to hear your feedback. Like for me, check-in day is my favorite day of the week. Like I
Yeah.
had my check-in this morning, I had the best session afterwards. Like it's just that reassurance that you're either on track or I'm here, this is what you need to improve on. Like that's what gets you from A to B. It's the best part. And so I really want to like put that onto my clients and be like, you should be enjoying this part of the coaching process the most.
Yeah, I agree. And even again, like on the weeks that don't feel the best, like I still always look forward to receiving feedback in regards to that week as well, and like what I can actually improve on and what I can do that will improve, say, ABC, whatever that may be. But yeah, I very much so agree. I like I'm not overly concerned, say, if like I receive a message saying that it's going to be late because I deem that like extremely respectful.
No,
Like
definitely.
obviously at the end of the day, we're being paid to provide a service. However, somebody's punctuality and somebody's ability to fill out things like daily habits, have their check-in on time, it very much so sets a tone for like whether or not they actually want to achieve said goal. So if week after week after week after week somebody's forgetting and I'm having to chase them for a check-in and no daily habits are getting filled out, I feel like you can't expect somebody when again that like punctuality isn't there, that intention, that clear like lack of value, like they don't value it. um
Mhm.
I feel like it's really hard to then become like emotionally attached to that individual's journey and process. But yeah, completely agree with you.
Because when they do that, to me, it looks like you don't care enough for your goal. Like it's not
Yeah.
really a priority for you right now. And then that comes back down to like why are you doing this? Why are you paying for coaching if you're just not investing the bare minimum into your journey? So yeah, that's kind of how I receive it. So definitely shouldn't be chasing for check-ins. And if you're signing up with a coach, like that's you're aware that's your responsibility to do that each and every week. And
Mm.
yeah, I feel like it's not a massive kind of thing you need to be doing. Like it's 5 minutes to do your weekly check-in and or 2 minutes at night to do your nightly one. So it's the bare minimum, I think.
Mm. I agree. And I always say to people too, the app Lens Buddy or even just like a self timer is the best thing you can ever get, because it
Mhm.
literally takes 2 seconds to take photos, like a little bit more accurately, probably like 2 minutes to take photos and then a minute to fill out the check-in. Like you cannot tell me if you're paying for a weekly service and you cannot dedicate 3 minutes in the morning of your check-in to submit your feedback through like as quickly as possible, purely so you can get feedback returned. Like you should want to hear the feedback as soon as possible. Then like it just shows a very clear lack of value, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got like a couple, like I don't know, can you see when people like watch your loom?
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
I
Like
very frequently scroll through and check.
yeah, like sometimes I'll have like clients like not even open it to like a few days later, and I'm like, no, like the expectation is like, I get my feedback, I'm listening to it within 2 minutes, like unless you're at work or something, I get that.
Mhm.
But it's like if you're opening it even 2 days later, I'm like, yeah, I don't understand. Like, aren't you trying to chase for that feedback? Isn't that
Yeah.
what you've signed up with for?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to literally hold myself back from opening my Loom video too quickly because I'm scared that my coach is gonna see like how quickly I jump on it and be like, what a fucking wacko. Here I will sometimes. I
You have a day job.
I said this to somebody the other day. I'll sometimes set a timer on my phone of like 5 minutes and be like, I have to wait 5 minutes before I open the loom, or else it's like every single week I'm like, straight onto
Yeah.
the loom.
Because what's your turnover? Because aren't they international? Like, what's
Yeah.
the time difference?
So I usually submit my check-in. I check in on a Friday. I submit my check-in usually between like 7 to sometimes 9 a.m. if I've just like started working. However, I usually don't get my feedback returned until like probably around like 8, 9, 10 p.m. that same Friday, which considering that like they're over the other side of the world, like I have absolutely no issues with. I think if you're going to sign up for an international coach, you have to accept the fact that there's going to be a slight time delay because of the time difference. But even with my clients, it's always first in, best dressed when it comes to doing completing check-ins. So when I start at say like 8 in the morning on days that I'm doing check-ins, like if it's coming through at say 11 a.m., I'm usually not getting to it until like 3 p.m. So I always just say
Mm.
get it in as soon as possible. One, because it again reflects values. It again is building on the discipline that you need to be successful within the process. And then obviously you should be eager to like hear, okay, what's the plan for the next week? Um, I agree. Yeah. Punctuality is such a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It shows me you care. It shows me you want this,
Mhm.
and it's not me wanting your goals for you. So,
Yeah, I think out of everything, the biggest, the hardest thing I find with coaching, and who did I talk to this? Who did I say this to? I was discussing this with somebody. It might have even just been Michael. But the hardest thing that I find is the psychological side of having clients who you can tell that you're so much more invested in them than they are themselves.
mm,
Or you feel like you're providing them, even doing like twice weekly check-ins, and you're sending them 20-minute Loom videos trying to just explain everything as best as you possibly can, but there's just no like action behind anything. And I find sometimes it can be so disheartening. Like seeing, say, somebody's potential, or they may have previously been really invested, and then maybe something happened, but we just can't get back onto it, or whatever it may be. Or somebody who sets like really big goals on the consult, they're super like keen and eager on achieving their goals, whatever. And then throughout the process, it's just like stab
dragons
the
and
heart
love.
every check-in. Yeah. I actually
Yeah.
think, and I went into this year, in regards to coaching, one very much so fixated on I would say setting better boundaries in regards to like the punctuality and requesting punctuality to be a higher priority, and things like again like personal boundaries, not overstepping my personal boundaries in regards to like say even calling my mobile phone, for example, randomly. I remember one time somebody called me, double called me to get through past my do not disturb at 11 p.m. at night while I was asleep to ask me like about something that was on her meal plan. And after that situation, I was
Yeah.
like boundaries within the coaching process. And I think it's made it so much better. But as well, like knowing when to detach a little bit emotionally, and obviously still provide the best service that you possibly can, and try and help the individual and try and explain to them like this and that and how that correlates to their goals and how it's going to make them feel. But taking a deep breath and sometimes just accepting, okay, like I myself am not going to change this person. Like you have to get to a point whereby like you actually want to change yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I remember last year, man, like I would just get so invested, and then things would pop up and I'd just be so disappointed. And I felt like I was so much more invested than some individuals, like very small, like minority, but still, like it plays such a toll psychologically too.
Yeah, I wear it massively. I'm like, I feel like if I can't, make you want to change, like that's on me. But some like majority of the time, like it's not. It's up to them, and you can only do so much for them. And yeah, exactly as you said, it's important to like find that boundary and break that line between, how far to push, and it's just something people need to resonate within themselves. Like they need to be truly ready to
Yeah.
get that change and make that change. But yeah,
Mm. Sometimes you've just got to refer to a psychologist too. Like,
I know sometimes I'm like, what's within my scope here? Like, how far can I go?
yeah. And I think boundaries there too are important
Yeah.
in regards to making sure that like obviously scope of practice wise, like you still want to help an individual as best as you possibly can, but sometimes like people don't need coaches, they need a psychologist and they need to accept that, or they need to be doing both. Like they need to be investing in both, which I never understand the rejection in doing so, because I remember going to my doctor and they offer, I'm pretty sure, like 20 to 30 mental health sessions that you can book for free through Medicare
Yeah.
with a psychologist. So I thought anybody who is like having issues and they're just like really prolonged issues whereby you hit a point whereby it's, oh, like, is this actually in my scope of practice to even be discussing this and helping you with this? And I'm noticing that it's actually taking a toll on me now. Maybe I'll refer out that way. But like we won't touch on whatever said topic any further. Like boundary.
That is one thing your PT course will teach you is refer.
Yeah.
Even like the injuries and stuff to like, yeah, I remember that. That was like even refer nutrition because PTs are only technically qualified to do
Mm.
so much with nutrition. But yeah, I think I actually have a lot of girls that currently work with psychologists, and I'm always like, keep me in the loop, and they always keep me updated with how that's going, and so I can get the full picture, because it's super important when you're programming things that they're doing on the daily basis.
Mm. I think too, again, like with the nutrition side, I would say the thing that walks the line of like referring is like the eating disorder side of things as well, in regards to referring that on, because sometimes it's really difficult because uh if you have, say, timeline, again, you're providing nutritional support, we're seeing improvements in psychology and self-belief and everything through, say, the implementation of training, for example. And again, sometimes you don't have to stop coaching, you just need to also invest in something that is more specific that provides you with a deeper level in regards to management strategies and whatnot on that front too. I find that the hardest one to sort of like walk the line on. But yeah, I agree. Referring is extremely helpful and sometimes like crucial within the process too. And like sometimes people just start coaching thinking that like uh losing a couple kilograms is going to change their life, and then they realize that it doesn't, and there's deeper things, and they have like really poor emotional management strategies, so they never like establish a really good habit system and lifestyle, so then they don't like reap the benefit of it or whatnot. But yeah,
No, I
I
agree.
agree. Mm,
Weight loss does not solve your problems, people.
yeah, I know. And the best thing I find, I always tell myself this too, if I'm ever in like in the depths of a surplus, when I'm like, oh yeah, like a mini cut would be so much fun right now, or like whatnot. And like I don't consider myself bad to be like dieting whatsoever. I literally just listen to whatever my coach tells me to do, and I never even like suggest. But I find that it's so incredibly helpful when you for clients, even like you pretend to clone them, and you have one who's like they're both doing the exact same thing. They're both eating the exact same food. They're both like training. They're both, say, sitting at like maintenance intake, but one's really inconsistent and one's super, super consistent. But body composition, say, doesn't change. Just the pure act of showing up and being consistent makes the individual who is feel significantly better about themselves and their self-esteem, even if, again, like their body doesn't change. They don't get anything out of like staying consistent from a like composition perspective, but just the acts in themselves, knowing that they're like not putting their health and wellness on a back burner is such a big driver for self-esteem. So I always remind people that like it's usually not a body fat or a body weight or a body composition issue, especially if like they don't need to diet whatsoever. It's usually like an intention and a consistency issue, which makes us feel as though, "Ooh, I've got to do something, I've got to diet to make myself feel better," when it's usually not the case as well.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, like showing up for yourself and doing the thing you said you were going to do is like such a rewarding feeling, and it's one that you'll never ever regret after doing. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the feeling, that you want to be striving for. It's
Yeah.
you're not going to get that from losing the weight. I
Mm.
guess like weight loss can just help in that regard of, you've stuck to something, if
Yeah.
because that's what, yeah, they find themselves through that structure in the process of weight loss.
Mm.
um, but yeah, and then just maintaining that post weight loss, like we've lost weight now we can like continue with that adherence. We just have a bit more food, and we, maybe our step count isn't as high, but continue showing up for yourself in the way you did to get to where you are now.
Mm. Alex Hormozy has such a good quote in regards to that, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. It's like something to do with oh, like you don't gain confidence or something like shouting affirmations at yourself in the mirror. Like you gain it through giving yourself undeniable evidence that you are the person that you say you are. Something like that. And it's so
And I think I really actually.
yeah, like the worst thing for your self-esteem is not your body composition, it's broken promises. Like it's telling yourself you're going to do something, again, not willing to feel the discomfort, and then realizing that you can't stack those bricks and you can't give yourself that little book of evidence and you can't like trust yourself enough to execute something. I feel like the most powerful feeling ever is having a goal and trusting yourself, knowing that, okay, sweet, I'm going to execute. I have no issues executing it. I know this is going to make me feel better about myself. I have no worries about starting a dieting phase because I know I'm going to stick to it. I know I'm going to execute it. I remember like growing up being terrified at the thought of um, like doing my own self-navigated fat loss. One, because I would starve myself on like monsters all day, but two, because like I would just do that for a couple days and then like whatever my plan was, I wouldn't stick to it, or I would make it more extreme. I would make it harder, and I would never just stick and execute the plan. And that is what really disrupts like self-esteem and self-belief and whatnot. However, I will say that I'm very much so like if you have dissatisfaction with your body, do something about it. Like it doesn't have to be you accepting however you are. But yeah, majority of the time, like when, say, self-esteem issues come up, of course, if you have a goal of losing body fat, like it doesn't make you feel any better when you're not executing it and you're not seeing the body fat loss. But it's not the not seeing the body fat loss, it's the fact that you're telling yourself or you're showing yourself through actions that you're unwilling to do what you have to do to get there. And then you probably feel like you're stuck like that forever. That's how I felt.
Which, which I think is worse, like the discomfort of staying where you are. Like I find that worse than the hunger or the extra body weight you're holding in a surplus, like whatever it is,
Yep.
like being stagnant, like that
Mm.
is comfort to me personally. So it's, it's you choose your hard when it comes to your
Yeah.
goals.
Like, I was talking to Jude about this the other day when we were filming reels about how um we fixate so much on the end goal, we don't even know how it feels to get there. So
Mm.
of course, we're going to have issues sticking to a plan if we're only fixated on that end goal that we have no emotional experience or feelings tied to. However, you do know exactly how it feels to be in a shit position that you're currently trying to get out of. Like, the driving force shouldn't necessarily just be who you're trying to become. It should be who you don't want to become again. So, focusing on the consequences of not changing, not thinking about the positives and the outcomes of you changing, fixate on I don't want to suffer the consequences and I don't want to feel how I used to feel or how I feel at the minute. Like that's a much bigger, I think, driving force behind change than just fixating on something that you're unsure of, that you've never gotten to before. So, mm,
100%. No, I
yeah.
agree.
Well, it was so lovely chatting with you.
No, I could just like, I'm such a chatterbox. I could just talk all bloody day.
That if we wrote out 3 pages, I genuinely think that I could like just talk and talk and talk and talk, especially around like female issues and coaching and just obviously all of that. We should definitely do a podcast that's purely just like training related, like the positive benefits of training, misconceptions around training, all of that stuff. Because I feel as though if as females we have a power, it is our training and like how much you get out of training, like psychologically, all of that. But yeah, that's obviously for another time. But either way, I very much so appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time, slightly later in the evening as well.
Thank you for having me. It was great. And love chatting with you always.
Beautiful.